Hey, my tech friends, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's continue to grow this channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Hey guys, since this is a project, I have to add the disclaimer here that if you follow this project and decide to modify your system in any way, shape, or form, this is 100% on you. I'll do my best to provide accurate information, but there's no way I could 100% know every implementation configuration that you would be running on your infrastructure. Thanks for the added and continued support. Hey guys, I figured I'd do a project update video today and maybe discuss specifically our Windows XP project. Now, I know that there's been some communication in previous videos about where we are in the state of this, and that's an interesting question. And to answer that question, I think it might be better just to show the progress. So initially what I was trying to do is locate the original LGPO configuration tool, which would have been part of the Microsoft security configuration tools in the 2003 days. Would have been part of a package called Security Essentials. Unfortunately, that package is gone, nowhere to be found. I searched high and low, even checked all of the burned disks and disks that I've had or created over the years, and I just don't have that package anymore. I don't know what happened to it. I can't find the package on the internet to download it. I can't find the package anywhere to download it. There's been people that put links inside of the YouTube channel. Unfortunately, with YouTube's new terms of service, if you do that, it'll automatically delete your comment out of the channel. So watch what you put down there. Best way to get it to me is just to send it to me via email. And if it's something that I could take a look at and see if I could get the package, that would be awesome. But at this point, I don't think it's even necessary. So what that package actually does is it creates a structure inside of your group policy folder under your Windows System 32 location under your C drive, your root drive. And in that folder, it will add the gpt.ini file and all the config files for group policy. So that way it tricks Windows into thinking that the group policy has been applied from a domain controller, even though it's local to the machine, which saves you a bunch of time on the configuration. However, with that said, I've gone through the full configuration already, and while I was able to export the configuration with scripting to actually back up our configured group policy settings using script logic versus the LGPO executable, or MSI file in this case, and that does work. The problem that I ran into is that when I went to go import it, it's a one-time import. So I could run the script once, but by the time the script got to the second portion of the script to import the second portions of the registry, it would crap out, the system wouldn't actually accept the changes, and you would end up in a situation where you had half the policy but not the other half. So then I thought to myself, there's got to be documentation somewhere on the internet that contains all of the registry locations for every group policy setting that exists. Which is when I came across this. And this is specifically a document that shows you specifically the location of a registry key as to where your configurations take place, and then the operating system that the policy originates from or is part of. So if you don't have this already in there, you would have to create the actual key. Whereas if you're in, say, a Windows XP professional location, you could go specifically to this location, you could add the changes. So what I did at that point was connected to the system that I had added to my domain. So my Windows XP machine that I had added to my 2008 R2 domain controller, I adjusted my group policy and continued to work on my GPOs. And once I had my GPOs set, I took that machine and I GP updated it, which updated the registry location. And then using that Excel spreadsheet was able to export our configuration data to a notepad document. And here is all of the registry keys that are associated to our group policy configuration on our Windows XP machine. Now there are some additional things that have to be fixed in here, but it's not really that killer at this point. as I did run through the Nessus scan to do a proof of concept based off of this machine here, which if we go into properties, you'll see that this machine is in workgroup mode and has never been on the network as far as group policy is concerned. Now, how we could tell that is if we go to C Windows System 32 and we go to the group policy folder. We do have an 80mm folder in here, but this is the configuration that's been added through the registry, not the GPT-ini file. So there's no tie between a loader when you log into the system and the actual registry configuration changes. And if we go further into this and actually do a reg edit, we could see the group policy configurations for our security settings in Windows XP, which is under your sec edit, which is specifically in your HKey local machine software Microsoft Windows NT current version sec edit. And this is where your group policy configuration is stored. So we were able to add all of our configuration, our security policy, with the exception of one policy which I'm still having an issue with, which we will see inside of our Nessus scan when we show the details or the update to the Nessus scan. So I figure as a comparison, what we should do is we should find a system in our Nessus scan to compare it to. So the most recent scan that we did was our Windows XP SASnet scan, and we see we had 3 criticals, 2 highs, 1 medium, and then 28 infos. That's what that clean Windows XP operating system shows as. Then we have our Windows XP full updates and GPO. So this is the system that contains all of the Windows updates for the point of sale as well as for the XP system itself, which is something that I haven't gotten to yet in our project, is the ability for us to use an ISO file to install our Windows XP full updates. Now, what I need to find is I need to find the WSUS offline configuration tool that existed for Windows XP, and I believe it's version 9.2. I could be wrong. If somebody knows if I'm wrong, please add it to the comments and tell me what the latest edition was for Windows XP for the WSUS offline. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to specifically link it to my WSUS server and download all of the latest updates specifically to the ISO file. So that way we could run the executable in the ISO file and streamline the Windows update process to update the Windows system completely. There'll be a couple registry changes you'll have to make in your system in order for you to accept all those updates, and those will be part of the package. I already have those written into our scripts and our configuration, our registry modification. So once that takes place, then you'll be able to run that registry change. You'll be able to copy 4 different folders into 4 different locations. Once those 4 folders are copied and once you have that registry key added, you'll need to reboot the system. When it comes back up, you'll have 4 manual updates you'll have to run. After those 4 updates are run, then you'll be able to run the WSUS offline installer to install the rest of the package so that way you can get to the point where you're fully patched. Now on the system that we tested in our Nessus configuration for our Granite XP system here, that system did not have any patches at the beginning and then had some patches at the end, but is still missing a large portion of patches. So that's just something to keep in mind when we look at these. So on our full updates and GPO configuration on our system, if we click on this and we go into this, we'll see that we had 0 vulnerabilities. And you'll see that the status was completed. And the reason why is because this particular system has all of the updates, all of the configuration and everything. That's the goal. This no records found, this no vulnerabilities found is the goal for our XP project without the use of a domain controller, which is the most difficult portion of this, because when we're talking about streaming configuration and registry changes into the system without group policy, it's literally just a registry modification script that has to do all the same work. But it's figuring out what needs to be added and then what can just be changed that becomes difficult, and why it's taken so long at this point. But if we drill down into the Granite XP configuration, we have a series of scans that were run and a series of times that they were run. And most notably is last night is when I started to work on this stuff. So when we started to look now at the pre-updates, we had 2 vulnerability criticals, 2 highs, 1 medium, and then 28 infos. That's what we should see out of the box on a Windows XP system. So the next scan that we run in here is our first scan no updates. And specifically what this scan does is it scans the system after we add some of the registry modifications, not all of them, but some of the registry modifications into the system from group policy, but still no Windows updates. And you'll see we dropped down to 2 criticals, 2 highs, and now we're at 29 infos. So now if we drop back again, now we get to the point where I found that we were missing 4 critical updates. So those 4 critical updates are ran, and it's still just the original beta configuration of script for the registry. We haven't made any registry additional changes at this point. We've just added about half of that script that exists on the other screen that we showed previous. And then we show the manual update process. So the manual updates is just 4 KBs. So the 4 KBs are specifically in here. There's a domain fix executable here. That's a KB. I don't know the KB number off the top of my head. It was listed on a Reddit post that I ended up grabbing the file from. It was downloaded directly from a Google Drive. It's necessary in order for your system to accept the later group policy configuration. Without this file, without this executable, there's no way to install the updated group policy configuration in your Windows XP machine. Then the rest of these are patches towards the WannaCry ransomware garbage that existed in the Windows XP environment, as well as a security patch that takes place for, it's called the Exonet, which is basically, it was the ability to run the ransomware on the Windows XP machine through the SMB1 configuration. So that's those 4 patches. Those need to be applied. They should be applied to every Windows XP machine on the planet, but since this particular file is nearly impossible to find anymore, I'm going to guess that it's probably not installed on any of the ones that are currently out there in the wild. So that brings us back over to the WSUS. So now if we jump into the manual updates only, we lose a critical, we continue with the 2 high, and then we still have the 29 info. So we didn't move the critical to an info. Basically, it solved the issue versus migrating it into a configuration change requirement. So at that point, I thought, you know what? Let's run the WSUS offline updates with the package that existed in the archive. So I ran all those updates, and then I ran an additional couple of offline updates when I found the additional configuration for the communication, the SMB garbage inside of the Microsoft catalog. And then I added a couple of registry keys to try to solve some of the issues that we were having with the SMB1 communication with the non-registered, non-authenticated, anonymous null authentication issue. So if we open that, now you'll see that we have 1 high, removed the 2 criticals, and then we're still at 29 infos. So we've gotten closer to resolving this at this point without needing to add the additional configuration of a group policy configuration. In other words, no domain controller. So that leaves us with our last one in this series, or this particular video, which obviously doesn't end this configuration. We still have quite a bit of work to do here in order for the system to be as secure as the system with domain control configuration. There's at least 30 changes that'll have to take place on the system. So if we jump in here now, we could see that we're down to 1 high and 28 infos. And that 1 high configuration is an authentication issue that has to do with the browser. Now, I have resolved the issues inside of the OS for accessing shares, for accessing the $root shares, for accessing the configuration in SMB shares, for accessing the system without a signature. I've even added into the scripts to remove Internet Explorer from the system, so that way the add remove Windows components doesn't exist for IE. However, on the scan, we still get the browser popping up. And I'm assuming it's probably not the browser as in Internet Explorer, but actual system browsing that it's popping up for. So we're going to have to figure out specifically what that issue is. Now, before you say, why don't you just click on the links? I've gone to all the links. I've actually also, in addition, checked all the CVEs. There's a lot of information that comes back saying that this could be a false positive on Windows XP. However, I don't believe in false positives 100% of the time. It's too convenient for this to be a false positive. It's likely an issue on the actual system or configuration issue, or the registry change that takes effect to fix that particular error on there is not actually solving the issue. So in other words, maybe there's something different between a Windows 10 system for this browser configuration, the name pipe, than there is on Windows XP. So that's going to be something we're going to have to dig down into. And if anybody down has any suggestions or thoughts on this, please feel free to add it to the comments. Maybe it's something that you guys have seen or come across. That would be awesome, because then I could maybe fix this without having to dig super far hardcore into the location. The rest of the vulnerability information that's in here is a lot of information that honestly could probably be ignored. For instance, OS identification doesn't really matter. The MAC address on the network adapter, well, right now there's no firewall turn on. That's going to be a given, and even if we lock that down, it'll probably cause issues on your internal network with your router, so I'm not going to do that. Now, in my scenario configuration, I use a lot of MAC filtering on my internal infrastructure, especially where these systems lie. So for me, I could lock it down where this doesn't show up. But if you use it in the wild, chances are you're going to have issues with it. So there's probably going to be a couple of infos still in this configuration list that will have to exist, and I doubt we'll ever get to the point where we could have this system locked down like we do for our legacy configuration for our full GPO. I mean, there's just no way to do that, because if I do that completely on a system that I don't have the control on the back-end infrastructure, then likely your system just won't work. So we're going to have to find a happy medium here and figure out what we could do to at least get our configuration with this one high to go away. Now, I don't care if we are stuck with 28 infos. That's really not that big of a deal, because those info configurations, a lot of that stuff is false positive. It could be ignored. It's not really the end of the world. But the one high is something that I want to resolve before we get this project completed. Now, my thought is it's possible that once we apply all the updates, that this particular high goes away. So the next portion of my project here is to figure out what version of the WSUS offline installer I can use, and then create the ISO package from my WSUS server itself with all of the Windows XP updates. And I don't just mean the ones that are present in the WSUS offline that we find on the archive website. I mean all of the ones that are present in the for XP Pro, for XP Embedded, and for XP POS 2009 Embedded. All of the updates, because all of those updates will give us the security and probably knocked out even quite a few of those info configurations in here. So that leads us to where we are now, which is, at this point, I don't have enough of this information completed where I'm going to post it on the Git website, but I will create and have the Git website up and running. And as I get further into this project and have these things, the bugs, the issues, the configuration, the security, as well as any identifiers in there that might point back to the system that it was created on, removed, at that point I'll make sure that I have all of this information publicly available just to grab off of the Git website. So something that I want to leave off on this before I disconnect and say let's call it quits on this particular video is that from a performance standpoint, this particular operating system with our configuration out of the box with the additional settings and configuration, at this point we're at 145 megs of required memory and roughly probably 0 to 1% CPU utilization at idle. This system doesn't have anything on it with the exception of the configuration. Now, if we compare that to a system out of the box, I will say that this system, I believe with all the security configurations, is about 20 to 40 megs higher utilization than a system that doesn't have all the configuration on it. That's something that we'll have to keep an eye on to see if there's maybe things that we'll have to do to the OS to trim it out and smooth it out, make it more streamlined and fast. Now, there's obviously tricks we could do. We could defrag it. We've proven before that with Windows XP, even if you're on the solid-state hard drive, the defragmentation does help with performance. We could also adjust the MFT file with our Disk Keeper software to see if we could then elongate the configuration file for the MFT, which may help with some of our overhead. The goal here is to be able to run this system at idle at 0 to 1% CPU usage and no more than a requirement of, say, 64 megs of memory, and still retain all of the security. Now, what that'll do is that'll give a base for people that create things like the integral system and the SASNet system, and the people that create the little or the tiny XP systems to use as a base operating system for their builds. I have no plan whatsoever in the future to build out customizations into this operating system to support later hardware and drivers. That's just not my kick. That's not my MO. That's a developer. I'm not a developer. I'm a systems engineer. There's a big difference between a developer and a systems engineer. That said, if there's any devs out there that want to use this configuration that you guys watch on the video, as long as you watch the video all the way through and don't click through the ads so I get the ad revenue, that's all I care. I mean, knock yourselves out. You can copy it right off the Git website once it's published there. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this series. Thanks again for watching.